Well, Jennifer, it's so great to connect today. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast, and I'm excited to talk with you about your work.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
In 2017, you published a really interesting book, and I'm wondering if you could kind of walk us through that book, maybe how it came to be, what it's all about, and then what you learned from the book.
Sure. So let's see. I guess a little background is I had been a newspaper reporter for about 10 years, and then I left newspaper reporting to get my MFA in creative nonfiction writing. And so I kind of went into the MFA knowing I wanted to write a book, but I wanted it to be narrative nonfiction. And I had recently just heard about Williams syndrome for the first time. And so Williams syndrome is this disorder. It's a genetic disorder and it has a lot of different components, but one striking component is that people who have this disorder are sort of biologically incapable of distrust. So they love everyone, they see everyone as a friend, and they're sort of intensely driven to connect with people socially.
Wow.
Um, and they're actually pretty good at making at least these sort of acquaintanceships. So they'll just walk up to strangers, they'll win them over with small talk. They're very charming. And so that was just wild to me as an introvert that this seems like almost a superhuman capability. So on the one hand, I was kind of envious of like their complete lack of social anxiety, which I have so much of. And then on the other hand, just seeing how there's a reason I have a lot of social anxiety, because to me, there's a lot of dangers in
Hmm.
being vulnerable and, not only risking social rejection, but also risking just being taken advantage of. And so I knew I wanted to explore that in a book, and I kind of wanted to frame it as a coming of age story to kind of get at how do you become a fully independent adult when you don't have this sort of inherent wariness and skepticism that's like hardwired into most of us. And so I met Eli, who's the main character of the book, and he was 12 at the time. And his mom, Gail, is a single mother. And I just fell in love with both of them. Obviously, Eli, very adorable, sweet guy. And then Gail actually ended up kind of becoming more of the main character because even though they were kind of both going through this challenging time together, like the stakes were higher for her just because she had more awareness of what was at risk. And so it was kind of about her journey of striking that balance between sheltering Eli from the risks of, even just being bullied or having people be mean to him, versus letting him develop into his own person and sort of navigate this social world and learn how to do it on his own. So that was kind of the arc of the book. But the big kind of underlying tension was like, is he going to like when is the bad thing going to happen? I think Gail, like me, is sort of anxious and pessimistic. And so she was just kind of thinking like, okay, well, there's gonna be a time when he pushes this too far. He comes up to somebody and wants to hug them, and they don't want that. And at worst, they're gonna punch him in the face. And even on the lower end of the spectrum, like they could be just so mean to him that they break his heart. And so that was kind of the through line of tension.
Okay, so lots of questions here. First, how common is Williams syndrome?
It's about 1 in 10,000 people
Okay.
born have Williams, and so it's very rare, but it's not so rare that like if you're in a city, I mean, if you're in the city the size of Houston, there's thousands of people with Williams syndrome.
This is something I had never heard of until I came across your work. So this is really interesting to me. And then how did you end up getting connected with Eli and Gail?
So when I kind of started on this topic, I just was getting involved with the Williams Syndrome Association. There's like a whole network
Mhm.
of support
Okay.
groups. And so I kind of reached out to the people, the organizers of this association, and said, I don't exactly know how I'm going to write the book yet. I didn't know if I was going to have a bunch of people with Williams syndrome that I would like
Mhm.
profile each of them, maybe at different stages in their lives. But anyway, I just started going to a lot of these events. There's like walks for Williams. There's like mom's lunches that are organized regionally. And so I met Gail first at one of these luncheons. And then it was a very, again, as an introvert, it's very hard for me to just go to places where I don't know anyone and say like, and now please, please
Yeah.
invite me to your home. I want to observe you and your family. But that's kind of what I did. And so I met a number of people with Williams. But Eli and Gail were just the ones that I really kind of clicked with. And I knew I was going to have to really get along well with them and like kind of
Yeah.
fit well with them because we were going to spend all this time together. And so, I mean, I was at their house on weekends. I was, with them a lot of the time, just going to family gatherings, but also like sporting events. Eli's in a lot of best buddies programs. So we took road trips together. I mean, we were just
Wow.
in each other's faces, but I mean, they're a delight. So it was great.
So when you meet someone with Williams syndrome, is it typically obvious that they have this syndrome?
Yeah, I mean, you can pretty much tell right away that there's something, and there is a spectrum of ability. So part of Williams syndrome is intellectual disability, and so in on average, the average IQ for someone with Williams is about 50, which is a little similar to Down syndrome. But there's a range. Some people have nearly normal IQ, but they'll all have like there's certain deficits in Williams that are really common. Visual spatial deficits is a big one, and sort of like spatial mathematical reasoning. That one doesn't kind of come up right away. But I mean, the thing is, even for people who are on the lower end cognitively, they still tend to have intact verbal abilities. And so they're still making small talk, and it's kind of enough to cover for the other deficits to where you might think like, okay, there's something a little bit strange about this person, but like we're having a normal conversation. The other part of Williams syndrome is that it tends to carry like very specific facial characteristics.
Hmm.
And so originally Williams syndrome was described as elfin faces syndrome because people tend to look kind of elf-like. So they have like maybe pointier ears, narrower chins, an upturned nose, kind of like a puckish look. So you can tell physically sometimes too.
Oh, interesting. And so I'm just wondering if I've met people with Williams syndrome, just didn't know what it was. And I'm curious when you said, okay, so Eli, or people with Williams syndrome, they're biologically incapable of distrust. So that's one the kind of central aspect of the book that you explored. So when you meet somebody with Williams syndrome or Eli, if I were to meet Eli and he's incapable of distrusting me. What would that look like? Like, how would that manifest in our interaction?
Well, I mean, first he's gonna hug you. I mean, like he's just gonna come at you and ask you if you want to like stay over at his house tonight,
Oh, interesting.
or can he come over to your house? I mean, it's just like sort of no boundaries. And that for me was really interesting because I was like, for sure this is gonna go poorly. I mean, also they live in Connecticut, it's New England, like, I just feel like people are not prepared for that level of like openness and intimacy right out of the gate. So, and he has this habit too. I mean, he was 12 when I met him. He's actually 25 now. So this has
Oh,
been a
wow.
while that I've been in their lives. And but he's always had this kind of ambush hugging tactic where like he's gonna act like he wants to shake your hand, but when
Mhm.
you reach out, he like instant bear hug. And so people are never people are never they never see that coming. So yeah, so that's kind of how it manifests.
Interesting. And then, so I'm especially curious of like, as you're going on this journey with Eli and his mother, I mean, so this is probably really hard for her because she's trying to figure out like, how much do I protect and shield versus just let Eli be Eli?
Right. That was huge for her. And I mean, to her credit, this was all very difficult. Any social situation, she was just, on alert, she was just worried. But she didn't, I mean, it would have been easy for her to just keep him home. But she knew that this is like his one joy in life is meeting and engaging with people. So she did all these activities. We did best buddies, he got involved in drama and theater. He did color guard. He's a lot of people with Williams are very musical, and he is
Hmm.
very musical. So he's singing at a lot of events. So yeah, she just kind of went out of her way to get him out into the world, even though that was very scary for her. And I think the biggest drawback for her at the time that I was writing or researching the book, she can't go to school with him, obviously. And,
Mhm.
he was in middle school when I was reporting on the book. And that's like sort of peak cruelty
Oh, yeah.
time
Yeah.
for kids. So she really had it in her head that like, because he doesn't always, I mean, especially in those kind of pre-adolescent years, he wasn't even necessarily always aware of when people weren't being nice to him. Like I think his trust in people extended so far that
Oh, interesting.
you could kind of get away with, you know, being kind of terse or stoic with him, and he wouldn't really recognize that as like not returning his affection.
Hmm.
But then there was a line where you could cross, and then he would get really mad if you were mean to him, and he registered it as being mean. So she didn't know, like, he's coming home, he's saying he had a great day, everyone there is his friend. Is that true? Are they just like teasing him in a way that he doesn't appreciate? Is he actually being bullied and he's just not aware of it? So that was definitely nerve-wracking for her. And he was in a special classroom with an aide, so like he shouldn't really have been on his own with kids, but he would like sit at a table with kids at lunch and the aide wouldn't sit with him. So Gail just didn't know exactly what was going on. But then so in 8th grade, his science class was studying genetics, and the teacher asked Gail to come in and talk about Williams syndrome. And so she was really nervous to do that because she didn't want to give the other kids like more
Yeah. Yeah.
ammunition to use against him, especially talking about like the intellectual disability and all that. So she agreed to do it. She came in, she talked to the class, and she was so floored by the way these kids treated Eli and all the questions they had for her. And it became so obvious to her that all of his classmates just they kind of saw his vulnerabilities, and it brought out their nurturing instincts. So they were there kind of like protecting him the way she would if she were there, and they were telling her about ways that they had gone out of their way to include him in things, and like telling her stories of like funny things he had done, but in a very sweet way. Like they genuinely cared about him. So she was so relieved after that. Like I'm thinking these kids are monsters and this Lord of the Flies over there, but
Yeah.
they actually really truly seem like they love him. So
So did you ever see people mistreat him?
no, I feel like that was the biggest and now I've known him for 13 years, and I feel like that was the tension with Gail and for me too. We both were waiting for the bad thing to happen, and the bad thing hasn't happened. You know what I mean? Like nobody has ever punched him. But people aren't even, I would say 9 times out of 10, people who meet him, like he lights up their day, like you can see how they're just genuinely delighted that this kid like care. I mean, it's nice when somebody is so driven to to talk to you that they want you to come to their house for a slumber party. So yeah, 9 times out of 10 people are just like they hug him back, they are excited, they want to stay and talk to him. And then, every now and then there's a person who's just like, that's not my thing. I don't want to hug you. But it's never been cruel. It's never been like they understand that he wants more than they're willing to give, and they're like, no, thank you.
This is so interesting because I think our brains just miscalculate. We misunderstand a lot of this stuff. And uh, sometimes our fears cause us to behave in ways that cause our fears to happen.
Yes.
And
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like so it's been eye-opening for me. I feel like it's changed me in some way, in a small way, to see him interact with people and just not, I mean, he's not artful about it. Like it's awkward, but it's
Mhm.
very sincere. And so that would be my worst fear, is just coming up and trying to hug somebody that didn't want to hug me. Like that's terrifying to me. But like he just gives it a shot, and most of the time it works. And I think that's the thing, is that people recognize sincerity and they appreciate vulnerability. And it's not, it's never as bad as the reaction is not going to be as bad as you think. He has like kind of a formula for how he like this his small talk formula. So he always starts with, "I like your shirt." And then he will ask, "Do you have a dog?" And if you have a dog, then you can talk about the dog. And if you don't, then his next question is, "Where's your dad?" Which is like, that always gets me because it actually opens up some really
Yeah,
interesting conversation. It's like gets into layers of like, what's your relationship with your dad? You
yeah.
know, so he's there, like, how often do you see him? And if your dad has passed, then he's so sorry, and he wants to talk about that. And so it's just funny to me because I go to a party and I just like I've never come up with a good like opener. Like I don't want to say like what do you do for a living? Because
Yeah.
I don't want you to think like I define you by your job.
Yeah.
And then I don't want to say like what do you do for fun? Because that just seems cheesy. But it's like you can just say anything as long as you're, genuinely curious about the other person. Like that's the lesson is people are forgiving, just try something.
Yeah, so it just makes me think that like if I want to connect more with people, yeah, sure, some of these questions can help. Having some ideas beforehand, maybe some sort of like framework or method. Um, but really, I think what Eli teaches us is if we want to connect more with people, we probably just need to like love them more, want to connect more, and maybe just that desire kind of supersedes any sort of approach we might take to it.
Right, because there's such an inward focus to social anxiety where it's more about I'm worried about how they're going to perceive
Yeah.
me. And I'm not even really thinking about them in that interaction. And so with him, it's like that part is gone. He's not even really anticipating your response. He's just like going for it, like, how can I connect with you? What's your deal? Like, let me hug you.
So one of the lessons I learned years ago was from this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and one of the chapters opens with this paragraph about man's best friend, so dogs, and dogs have become just a staple and households throughout the world. And then the author asks, why do we love dogs so much? Why does as a species, I mean, we've taken these animals into our homes and we've given them this nickname of the man's best friend, and so the reason we love dogs so much is because dogs love us. When you walk into your house and you see your dog, the dog is so excited to see you. Now, of course, some of us, I had a cat growing up and I loved cats as well. And we're able to connect with them for different reasons. But it does seem pretty clear. Like one of the reasons we love dogs is just because they love us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that is the funny thing about Williams is that because they love everyone pretty much universally, like you feel very special to when they shower you with that love. But like, we were at a convention, a Williams syndrome convention, and there was a woman who had a baby with Williams. I mean, like a 8-month old, like a really tiny baby that she was carrying around. And that baby would reach out its hands to everyone to
Wow.
say, pick me up. Yeah. And she she was just like, people just think like, oh, I'm so special. This baby loves me. This baby wants me to pick me up.
Yeah.
She's like, don't feel so good about yourself. Like he does that to everyone. But I mean, it's still special. I mean, for Eli, like every connection is special. It's just that like it's also universal.
Yeah. And so how is Eli doing now?
He's doing really well. So he still lives with his mom, but he's in like kind of a day program through the state. So he does activities with other people during the day. So yeah, I mean, I feel like he's matured a lot. I feel like his small talk has kind of advanced. He's gotten a little better at controlling the hugging, but like it's just always, I mean, you can see that battle going on, like the gears turning in his head, like whenever he meets a new person, he's like, handshakes and high fives only, handshakes and high fives only. Like that's his mantra. That's what Gail has told him. But sometimes it just wins out and he's still gonna go for the hug.
Well, such an interesting story. This is just fascinating to me. It's so insightful and touching, and I'm grateful that you would take the time to share this with me. Any final thoughts or lessons you want to share as we wrap up here?
Oh gosh. No, I can't think of anything. Yeah, that's it.
Hey, well, this was this was so much fun for me, and it's like we have this. It's very cool that you chose a topic that is not just interesting, but teaches us something about ourselves, about humanity. What a cool story. What great insights. So thank you so much for sharing these lessons with me today.
Well, thank you. It was so great talking to you.